Today, our media partner at the SF Standard is bringing us a new series. It's called Ask the Standard. They're getting answers to questions from their readers. They're inviting people to submit questions about important topics in San Francisco and the wider Bay Area. They'll collect them all, and the Standard's reporting team will answer the most pressing and interesting ones. And today, they're tackling homelessness in San Francisco. More than 100 readers submitted questions, with the majority wanting to know how many of the unhoused are actually from the city. Joining us live now to answer that question and more is SF Standard reporter David Sjostedt. Thanks so much for being here, David.
Thanks for having me.
This seems like it was a pretty popular question for your readers. Why do you think people are so curious about this?
Yeah, I think it's actually a popular question, not just in San Francisco, but across the country in cities that struggle with homelessness. I think there's this general desire to understand where people are from who are on the street, because it would impact how the city may provide services for those people, and poses questions about, if people are coming from out of town without a home, why is that?
Yeah, and we'll get to the answer about the resources and how it impacts that in just a moment. But first, I want to know, where did you go to find the data to answer the question of how many of the unhoused people are actually from the city and how that's tracked?
Yeah, it's interesting. About every 2 years, the city collects data based on a survey that they do with around 700 unhoused people in the city. And so there's responses from people on the street about where they're from, and the city collects that every year and they publish that, but it doesn't seem to actually make it to residents, I guess, which is why everybody still has that question.
And what did you find out when it comes to their prior residence of the people that were asked?
Yeah, the majority of people said that they did have a prior residence in San Francisco, around 70%. And there was only around 4% who said that they were from their prior residence was outside of California. So most of the people were from the Bay Area, strong majority who had residences in San Francisco prior to becoming homeless.
Interesting to know. And this data helps with allocating resources like permanent housing. You mentioned this earlier. Talk about some of the debate that happens around services provided to the unhoused.
Yeah, part of the reason that this is an interesting question, and I think a reason that some people want to see more data collected on this, is because it plays into a debate that is already going on in the city about whether the city should be providing permanent housing for every single homeless resident. Because the question remains, is if somebody comes here because the city is providing housing for everybody, is the city kind of becoming like a scapegoat or a refuge for problems that, it's a national problem. Other cities are having this problem, and if other cities aren't carrying their weight, and San Francisco is, there's a concern that, people might be coming here for those resources. And so it plays into that debate a little bit, but these numbers seem to, point against that argument that the city shouldn't be investing in housing.
But what does the city do for people who aren't from here?
Well, it depends. So if there are people aren't from here, I think it does play into where they land on a list for housing. But ultimately, they aren't, forced to do anything differently because they're not from here. But the city does have a program called Homeward Bound for people who aren't from here and want to return to the city of their origin. The city will connect them with family and will buy them a plane, bus, or train ticket back to where they're from. And they were sending about 500 to 1,000 people back home prior to the pandemic, when travel restrictions put that program in a standstill.
Oh, interesting. In your new series, what other questions did you get from readers? Were there some other popular ones that you might be looking into in the future?
Yeah, I think people really want to know who are people that are living on the street. Why did they end up there? There's some more political questions, like, why doesn't the city build more shelter? Why doesn't the city do this? Like, how much funding is actually spent? Like, where does the money go? So many questions, and they keep on coming in by the day. So I'm going to have my hands full.
All right, and we'll be checking back in with you to see what other questions you pick to answer for your readers. Thank you so much, David, for your time.